Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or indeed good evening, depending on your time zone and depending on when you are watching this. I'm James Innes and this is my YouTube show, The Jobs Guru. It is Thursday, the 2nd of July 2020, my last show for this week, but I am delighted to see you all here for today's episode. I extend a very warm welcome to all those who have subscribed since the last episode, and if you haven't yet subscribed, then please do think about subscribing so that you don't miss out on the next episode. My 3 shows this week all have a common theme: equality. Discrimination, diversity, division, human rights. Were we not all created equal? I started on Monday, Tuesday actually, lost track of time there. Tuesday, that's right, with racial discrimination. I moved on yesterday, which was Wednesday, is that correct? Yeah, Wednesday, to talk about gender equality, including the concept of equal pay and also the gender pay gap. And today, which is Thursday, I'm going to be talking about sex and sexual orientation and more. If you have any questions or comments as you watch, like, James, do you even know what day of the week it is? Then please do type them into that comment section below. I'm sorry, I get confused. When you work 7 days a week, as I often do, it all blurs into one. Anyway, if you like what you see, please do hit it with that YouTube thumbs up. So, sex, or perhaps less ambiguously, gender, and sexual orientation. I'm probably entering another minefield with this topic. Is it something I'm an expert on? No. Do I know all about the law, the rules and the regulations when it comes to discrimination in the workplace on the grounds of sex and sexual orientation? Yes. But I'm not an expert when it comes to the whole topic of LGBT or GLBT or LGBTQ or LGBTI or LGBTIQ or indeed LGBT+. Except I do know that when it comes to such acronyms, or to be precise, initialisms, even the various communities themselves are divided. The whole topic can be very divisive. I fully realise I'm on thin ice here. I'm not personally a member of any of these communities. I'm probably best described as metrosexual, in fact. I do have plenty of friends within these communities, and that does give me some insight. But basically, I know no more about all this than the 90-odd% of you, my viewers, who, like me, are cisgender heterosexuals. Let's be clear as to what we're talking about here. Sexual orientation over and above heterosexuality, i.e. gay, lesbian, bisexual, etc. And sex, or gender, which is really a whole spectrum. Indeed, couldn't it be very reasonably argued that sexual orientation is also a whole spectrum? In fact, I would argue that. I used the word cisgender just a few seconds ago. Aware that, many of you may not know that one, I can explain that it is quite simply the opposite of transgender. But what exactly is transgender? Well, transgender people have a gender identity or gender expression that differs, from their sex assigned at birth. This includes people whose gender identity is the opposite of their assigned sex, trans men and trans women, and also people who are not exclusively masculine or feminine, people who are non-binary or genderqueer, including bigender, pangender, gender fluid, or agender. It's important to note that sex or gender and being cisgender or transgender is independent of sexual orientation. Transgender people may identify as heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, asexual, etc. The term transgender is also distinguished from intersex, a term that describes people born with physical sex characteristics that do not fit typical binary notions of male or female bodies. Now, in the UK, the Equality Act of 2010, which I mention quite often in my shows because it is a damn good piece of legislation, that protects people against discrimination, harassment, victimisation in employment. And, by the way, also is used as a private and public services, based on 9 protected characteristics. And these protected characteristics include sex and sexual orientation, aforementioned, and also gender reassignment. That is one of the 9 protected characteristics. So what exactly is gender reassignment, I hear you ask? Well, it's the medical aspect of gender transitioning, that is, modifying one's characteristics to better suit one's gender identity. It can consist of hormone therapy, sex reassignment surgery, and other procedures altering appearance, including, for example, permanent hair removal. And this discussion wouldn't be complete without mentioning those who identify as queer, albeit that is a controversial term, but I'm using it specifically in the context of those who actively identify themselves as queer. And the term queer describes a broad spectrum of non-normative sexual and gender identities and, indeed, politics. As I say, in the UK, we have legislation in place for all of the aforementioned categories of individuals to protect them from discrimination. Although, of course, in reality, we all know that we still have a long way to go. There's only so much that can be achieved through legislation. But I do think the UK is ahead of the curve on this front. Yeah, it's important to note, for example, that the US Supreme Court only voted just the other day, you might have seen it in the news, that the 1964 Civil Rights Act protects gay, lesbian and transgender employees from discrimination in the workplace. And then only by 6 votes to 3, it was most definitely not unanimous. So, I've covered racial discrimination this week. I've covered gender equality. And today, I've covered sex, sexual orientation, and indeed gender reassignment. The common theme is obvious, and many of the principles are the same. There are, of course, other categories of people who suffer from discrimination, harassment, and victimisation in employment. People are discriminated against because of disabilities, because of their age, because of their religion or beliefs, indeed also because of their nationality and citizenship. But we'll leave it there for this week. I have no doubt that these issues of equality, discrimination, diversity, division, human rights are issues that I will return to in the future. We've only barely scratched the surface this week, and this week is just an introduction to the subject. There's a lot more to discuss. So now, we're not far from the end of today's show. I'll be back next week, Tuesday. Remember, this show is Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday each, and pretty much every week. Just 2 more things. First, I must squeeze in some routine but important requests. Do please check me out on social media and connect, follow, or otherwise stalk me, but please don't troll me. Life is too short for trolls. If you have any questions or comments about this episode and, about the show in general, indeed, life, the universe, why children feel it is necessary to wipe greasy fingerprints all over the television, whatever, do please let me have them below in the comment section. If you like this episode, then do please hit it with the YouTube thumbs up. If you've liked it already, then, maybe think about subscribing and ringing that bell so you don't miss out on the next episode. Of course, if you've already done all of that, then thank you. Finally, what is happening in the next episode? Well, next week, Tuesday, I'm going to be talking about ATS, or ATSs, or as I say, here, applicant tracking systems. Okay, perhaps not the most exciting and sexy of topics, but nonetheless a very important one, and something which confuses many, many people. So I'm hoping to enlighten you on something which is very important, increasingly important in recruitment. I do hope you'll tune in. Thank you for watching today. Keep safe and be well, my friends. See you next Tuesday. Goodbye.